Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Moonlight filtered through the leaded windows of Gotham's old judicial district, casting elongated shadows across marble floors that seemed to whisper with memories. Batman moved silently through the abandoned corridors of what had once been the pride of the city's legal system. The building stood empty now, its grand chambers and offices left to gather dust after the construction of Gotham's new courthouse across town. But history lingered here in the quiet darkness, particularly the history of one man. Harvey Dent's former office remained untouched at the end of the East Wing, like a museum piece preserved in amber. The heavy oak door still bore his name in faded gold lettering, a reminder of what Gotham had lost when its shining district attorney fell into darkness. Batman paused before entering, his reflection fragmenting across the frosted glass panel. Even now, years later, these visits carried the weight of failure and regret. "I'm at Dent's old office," he sub-vocalized to Alfred. "The security system showed movement here last night." "Curious," Alfred's calm voice replied through the cowl. "That wing has been abandoned for years. Perhaps our coin-flipping friend is feeling nostalgic." Batman pushed the door open slowly, its hinges protesting with a low moan that seemed fitting for this place of ghosts. Inside, time stood frozen. Law books lined shelves that reached toward ornate ceilings. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface bare except for a thin layer of dust and something new. A small brass lamp burned with a steady flame, illuminating a single sheet of paper placed precisely in the center of the desk. "Someone's been here," Batman confirmed, approaching cautiously. The paper was high-quality stationery, cream-colored and heavy. Upon it, written in an elegant hand Batman recognized immediately, were words that seemed to float between past and present. "Dear Harvey, I wonder if you remember the day we took office, the hope we carried into these rooms. I flip the coin now to decide whether those memories belong to you or to me. Today it landed scarred side up. Your memories remain yours alone, while I attend to what must be done." "Alfred," Batman said quietly, photographing the letter with his cowl's camera. Dent's writing letters to himself. The silence that followed carried Alfred's consideration. Most intriguing, the bifurcation of his psyche appears to have progressed. He's now treating his former self as a separate entity entirely. Batman scanned the room methodically, looking for any other signs of disturbance. The letter mentions what must be done. Two-Face is planning something. "Perhaps," Alfred replied, "but note the contemplative tone. This doesn't read like the prelude to one of his typical vengeance schemes. It's almost reflective." Batman's attention caught on a slight discoloration in the wood paneling behind the desk. Pressing gently, he found a small concealed compartment, the kind of hidden safe a district attorney might use for sensitive documents. It was empty now, save for a book of matches bearing the insignia of the Gotham Arms Hotel. "Left a clue," Batman observed, deliberately. "The Gotham Arms," Alfred mused, "once the city's finest establishment. It's been closed for renovation these past 6 months. Batman pocketed the matchbook. Perfect location for someone who doesn't want to be disturbed. I'll check it out. As he turned to leave, Batman paused, studying the steady flame of the brass lamp. Unlike Two-Face's usual theatrical gestures, the dramatic coin flips, the dual symbolism, this felt intimate, personal. The single flame reflecting across the polished surface of the desk seemed to dance between light and shadow, creating patterns that were neither fully one nor the other, but something in between. He wanted me to find this, Batman realized. This isn't a criminal leaving clues. This is Harvey reaching out. The night embraced Batman as he moved across Gotham's rooftops, the city unusually quiet beneath a canopy of stars. Nights like these were rare in Gotham, peaceful, almost serene. Even the police band reported nothing more serious than a minor traffic incident downtown. It was the kind of night that once would have allowed Bruce Wayne a rare opportunity to rest, but now it only heightened his vigilance. Calm in Gotham too often presaged a storm. The Gotham Arms Hotel rose from the city's financial district like a monument to faded elegance. Once the crown jewel of Gotham's hospitality, its Art Deco facade now stood shrouded in scaffolding and construction tarps. Batman observed from a neighboring rooftop, thermal imaging revealing the building was not as abandoned as it appeared. A single heat signature moved rhythmically on the top floor, pacing back and forth with mechanical precision. An occupant, Batman reported. Top floor, moving in a pattern consistent with Two-Face's habits. Do be careful, sir, Alfred cautioned. Mr. Dent's unpredictability has only increased with time. Batman grappled silently to the hotel's roof, finding the access door unlocked. Another invitation. The grand penthouse suite had once hosted presidents and royalty, but now stood in a state of half-renovation. Plastic sheeting dyed the space, creating a labyrinth of translucent walls through which shadows moved like memories trying to take form. And there, seated beside another brass lamp, identical to the one in his former office, was Harvey Dent. The unmarred side of his face caught the warm glow of the flame, creating the momentary illusion of wholeness. A stack of letters sat before him, neatly arranged, along with an open bottle of scotch, the same brand he had favored in his days as district attorney. "Evening, Batman," Harvey said without looking up, his voice eerily calm. "I wondered how long it would take you to follow the breadcrumbs." Batman remained still, analyzing. This wasn't Two-Face's typical behavior. No coin in evidence, no theatrical pronouncements about justice and chance. Just Harvey, writing by lamplight, his manner almost peaceful. "What's this about, Harvey?" Batman asked, keeping his distance but moving into the circle of light. "The letter? The lamp? This meeting? You're not planning a crime. You're making a statement." Harvey looked up then, the scarred side of his face emerging from shadow with grotesque detail. "Not a statement. A confession." He gestured to the letters. "I've been writing to Harvey for months now, telling him what we've become." Batman remained silent, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. This version of Dent, caught somewhere between his dual personas, was rare and potentially revealing. "You know what today is?" Harvey asked, pouring a second glass of scotch and pushing it across the table. An oddly civilized gesture. 10 years since the Maroney trial. 10 years since acid met flesh and Harvey Dent died. "Harvey didn't die," Batman replied calmly, making no move toward the offered drink. "He's still there. These letters prove it." A bitter laugh escaped Dent, distorting into something pained as it navigated the damaged muscles of his face. Do they? Or do they just prove that even monsters can feel nostalgia? He lifted a letter, holding it reverently. I write to him because no one else remembers who he was. Not really. Not even you, despite your visits to his office. Batman studied the man before him, noting the uncharacteristic steadiness in his hands. You haven't flipped the coin tonight. No, Harvey agreed, almost smiling. Tonight belongs to memory, not chance. He pushed the stack of letters forward. Take them, read them. I've left copies in various places throughout the city. Breadcrumbs, as I said. Follow them if you wish. Consider it a guided tour of a man's dissolution. Before Batman could respond, Harvey stood abruptly. Don't worry, Dark Knight. No schemes tonight. No innocent lives hanging in the balance, just words on paper. He moved toward the balcony, his silhouette cutting a jagged shape against Gotham's glittering skyline. The coin gets its due tomorrow. Tonight belongs to Harvey. With unexpected grace, he stepped through the balcony doors and vanished into the darkness. Batman moved quickly to follow, but found only empty air. Harvey had descended via a construction elevator on the building's exterior, disappearing into the maze of Gotham's streets below. Batman returned to the table, gathering the letters carefully. Each envelope was addressed simply, Harvey Dent-esque. Inside, page after page of elegant handwriting chronicled conversations between two halves of a fractured soul. Some entries were signed by Harvey, others by Two-Face, creating a dialogue across a divide no psychiatrist had ever successfully bridged. I have something, Alfred, Batman said quietly. Letters, dozens of them. Dent writing to himself, documenting his psychological state. Most extraordinary, Alfred replied. Are you bringing them back to the cave for analysis? Batman cast one final look around the penthouse, noting the careful arrangement of furniture, the methodical organization. This wasn't the chaos Two-Face typically left in his wake. This was deliberate, meaningful. Yes, he confirmed, but I don't think these are clues to a crime. They're something more personal. The flame in the brass lamp flickered as Batman gathered the letters, casting dancing shadows across the walls. For just a moment, in that unsteady light, it was possible to imagine Harvey Dent as he once was. Gotham's white knight, untouched by tragedy, full of conviction and hope. The illusion vanished as quickly as it had formed, leaving only the reality, a man divided against himself, reaching back across time toward what he had lost. The Batcave's ambient sounds created a soothing backdrop as Alfred carefully arranged the letters in chronological order, his methodical approach bringing structure to Harvey's chaotic outpourings. Bruce sat nearby, cowl removed, watching as his oldest friend worked with the patience of an archivist, preserving fragile historical documents. Remarkable, Alfred murmured, examining a particularly dense page of writing. The handwriting shifts subtly, depending on which personality is expressing itself. When he writes as Harvey, the script is more controlled, reminiscent of his days as district attorney. When Two-Face emerges, the letters become sharper, more aggressive. Bruce nodded, studying the pattern Alfred had identified. It's as though they're fighting for control of the pen itself. Indeed, Alfred agreed. A physical manifestation of his internal struggle. He selected a letter from early in the sequence, holding it carefully by its edges. Would you like me to read some aloud, sir? It might help to hear the words as Harvey intended them. Bruce leaned back in his chair, allowing tension to release from his shoulders. Please. Alfred cleared his throat and began reading in his measured, dignified voice. Dear Harvey, today I visited our childhood home. Or rather, I observed it from across the street while flipping the coin to decide whether to burn it down. You'll be relieved to know it landed clean side up. Some part of me wonders if the coin possesses its own will, if perhaps it chose to spare the place where we first learned about justice from our father. Do you remember his favorite saying? The law is reason free from passion. He was wrong, of course. The law is nothing without passion. It was your passion for justice that made you effective, and it was passion that ultimately unmade you. Now only the coin speaks with true objectivity. Hush, the words hung in the cave's cool air, carrying an intimacy that felt almost intrusive. Bruce closed his eyes briefly, imagining Harvey writing by lamplight, conversing with the ghost of himself. He refers to himself in both the first and second person, Bruce observed, sometimes within the same sentence. The boundaries between his identities appear fluid, Alfred agreed, selecting another letter. In this one, dated 3 months ago, he seems particularly lucid. My dear Harvey, I dreamt last night of Grace, not the way you remember her, alive and laughing, but as I saw her last, weeping at the sight of what we'd become. You never visit her grave, but I do, though I stand far back among the trees where no one can see. I wonder what you would say to her if you could speak through me. Would you apologize for failing to protect her from Moroni's men? Would you tell her about the coin, how it makes choices bearable by removing the burden of moral agency? Or would you simply weep, as I sometimes do when the coin permits such weakness? Your other half. Bruce leaned forward, surprised. Grace Lamont, Harvey's fiancée before the attack. She left Gotham years ago. I made sure she was financially secure. Perhaps Mr. Dent is unaware she's still alive, Alfred suggested. Or perhaps the visits to an empty grave are symbolic rather than literal. They continued through the letters, Alfred's gentle voice giving dignity to Harvey's written confessions. Some were philosophical reflections on justice and chance. Others contained raw pain that made Bruce wince with its intensity. Occasionally a flash of the old Harvey Dent shone through, his wit, his idealism, his unwavering belief in justice. One letter in particular caught Bruce's attention. Harvey, I visited the old courthouse today, our office. Batman has been there recently, did you know that? I followed him once and saw him standing at our desk looking at the photographs we kept of our parents, of Grace. What does he seek there? Absolution, understanding. I sometimes wonder if, beneath his mask, he carries scars like ours. Not visible, perhaps, but just as defining. The coin says we should kill him, but some nights I choose not to flip at all. Some decisions even chance shouldn't determine. Alfred paused, meeting Bruce's gaze. He's aware of your visits. I've been monitoring that building for years, Bruce acknowledged. Something about it always drew me back. Now I understand why. He's a kinship with you, Alfred observed gently. A recognition of shared trauma, though expressed differently. Bruce stood, moving to the cave's computer system, where he began pulling up files on Harvey Dent's recent activities. These letters suggest a level of self-awareness I didn't think remained in him. The question is, why share them now? Why this elaborate breadcrumb trail? Perhaps, Alfred suggested, carefully replacing the letters in their envelopes. After a decade of internal dialogue, Mr. Dent simply requires an external perspective. Even the most divided mind eventually seeks integration. Bruce paused, considering. He mentioned that the coin gets its due tomorrow. Whatever Harvey's planning, these letters are prologue, not epilogue. Alfred nodded soberly. Then we must decipher their message quickly. Shall I continue? Bruce returned to his seat, the familiar sound of Alfred's voice creating a center of calm in the midst of uncertainty. As the next letter was read aloud, Bruce closed his eyes, listening not just to the words, but to the spaces between them. The whispers of a man trying desperately to reconcile who he was with what he had become. Morning light had begun filtering into the cave through hidden fissures when Bruce finally looked up from the last letter. Alfred, ever vigilant despite the hour, placed a cup of tea beside him before resuming his seat. "What conclusions have you drawn, sir?" Alfred inquired, his voice showing no signs of fatigue despite the all-night reading session. Bruce rubbed his temples gently, organizing his thoughts. Harvey's planning something specific. These letters document not just his psychological state, but a progression towards some kind of reconciliation between his two halves, Alfred asked. Or perhaps a final separation, Bruce countered. This passage from the most recent letter is particularly concerning. He selected the final page, reading aloud. "My dearest Harvey, tomorrow marks a decade since our division. The coin has decreed a fitting commemoration, a chance for Gotham to experience what we've endured. Every soul in this city lives with duality, the face they show the world and the one they hide from it. Tomorrow they make their choice, or chance makes it for them. I've prepared a gift for you, old friend, a moment of clarity before darkness falls. Two-Face." Alfred frowned thoughtfully. Rather ominous, yet frustratingly vague. A gift that offers clarity before some manner of city-wide event. Bruce stood, moving toward the computer array where he'd compiled data on recent police reports, shipping manifests, and security footage related to Two-Face's known associates. Nothing unusual in his normal patterns. No major thefts, no gang activity, no significant withdrawals from his offshore accounts. Most curious, Alfred mused, Mr. Dent has typically been rather theatrical in his criminal enterprises. "That's just it," Bruce said, turning back to the letters spread across the work table. "This doesn't feel like a criminal enterprise. It's too personal." Alfred nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, and yet given Mr. Dent's history, we cannot discount the possibility of public endangerment." A soft alert from the computer interrupted their discussion. Bruce moved quickly to investigate, finding a notification from the GCPD secure channel. "Gordon's activated the signal. It's barely dawn. Perhaps the commissioner has insights we lack," Alfred suggested, already moving to prepare the bat suit. Mr. Dent's relationship with the police department was once quite close. Some institutional memory might remain. Minutes later, Batman stood atop GCPD headquarters, where Jim Gordon waited beside the now darkened signal, steam rising from 2 cups of coffee in his hands. The commissioner looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "Thought you might be expecting this," Gordon said by way of greeting, offering one of the cups. Batman made no move to take it, so Gordon set it on the ledge with a shrug. "A package was delivered to my office this morning, addressed to me, but with a note saying the contents would be of particular interest to you." He handed over a small box wrapped in brown paper. Batman examined it carefully before opening, finding inside a single brass key and another letter, written in Harvey's distinctive hand. "Dent?" Gordon asked, noting Batman's recognition. "Yes. He's been leaving messages across the city." Batman opened the letter, scanning its contents. "Commissioner, please convey this key to our mutual acquaintance. It opens a safety deposit box at Gotham National Bank, registered to Harvey Dent. Inside is something I've held in trust for 10 years. Something that belongs to the man I once was. The choice of whether to use it belongs to Batman. For once, the coin has no say in the matter. Batman pocketed both key and letter. Has there been any unusual activity reported overnight? Anything that might suggest a larger operation? Gordon shook his head. Just the opposite. One of the quietest nights we've had in months. Even the usual suspects seemed to be laying low. He sipped his coffee, studying Batman over the rim of his cup. You know what today is? 10 years since Harvey Dent's transformation, Batman confirmed. Gordon nodded grimly. 10 years since Gotham lost its White Knight. I was thinking about him recently, before his accident. Did you know he used to volunteer teaching law classes at Gotham City College? Spent his Sunday afternoons helping kids from the Narrows understand their rights. He sighed heavily. Hard to reconcile that man with what he became. Perhaps that's exactly what he's struggling with now, Batman replied. These messages suggest a level of self-awareness I haven't seen in him before. Gordon's expression grew concerned. You think he's planning something big for this anniversary? Yes, Batman confirmed, but its nature remains unclear. I need to check this safety deposit box. Gordon nodded. I'll keep the department on alert status. Quietly, though. No sense panicking the city. He hesitated, then added, if you find whatever he's leading you toward, if there's any chance of reaching the man Harvey used to be, I'll do what I can, Batman promised, though they both knew the limitations of such pledges where Two-Face was concerned. As he prepared to depart, Batman paused. Gordon, who from the old days would have known Harvey best, someone who might understand what he's thinking now. The commissioner considered briefly. Dr. Elaine Cooper. She was the department psychologist when Harvey was DA. They worked closely on several high-profile cases. She retired a few years back, but still consults occasionally. Lives in that renovated brownstone development on Kane Street. Batman nodded once, committing the information to memory before disappearing over the edge of the rooftop. Gordon remained, watching the dawn light strengthen over Gotham. 10 years since one of the city's brightest hopes had fallen into darkness. 10 years of coins flipping between justice and vengeance. Happy anniversary, Harvey, Gordon murmured to the empty air. Whatever you're planning, don't make us bury what's left of you. Gotham National Bank operated with quiet efficiency, its marble halls speaking of old money and discretion. Bruce Wayne had no difficulty accessing the safety deposit vault, his family's long association with the institution ensuring privacy and minimal questions. The box Harvey's key opened was small, containing only a single item, a worn leather appointment book dating back 10 years. Bruce recognized it immediately as the schedule keeper Harvey had carried everywhere during his time as district attorney. He had often joked that while others migrated to digital calendars, he preferred the tactile reminder of commitments made, promises to be kept. Bruce opened the book carefully, finding most pages filled with Harvey's meticulous handwriting. Appointments, court dates, meetings with witnesses, the mundane machinery of justice, recorded in precise detail. But what caught Bruce's attention was a series of entries for the week leading up to Harvey's acid attack, highlighted and annotated in recent ink. Each annotation documented decisions made, paths taken or avoided. Small notes in the margins questioned alternatives. What if I had listened to Bruce's warning about Maroni? What if I had accepted protection? What if I had recognized the signs? The final page, dated the day of the attack, held only a simple notation in Harvey's original handwriting. Court 3, Maroni trial, 10 a.m. Around this, in fresh ink, was drawn an intricate pattern of branching lines. a decision tree showing different possible outcomes from that single fateful day. At the bottom of the page, a recent note addressed to Batman. Every life hinges on moments. The coin knows this truth, even when we deny it. Visit the courtroom where Harvey died. Understand that chance and choice are two sides of the same scarred coin. Bruce closed the appointment book, slipping it into his pocket. The clinical quiet of the bank vault felt suddenly oppressive, too sterile for the raw human tragedy documented in those pages. Harvey wasn't just commemorating his transformation, he was re-examining it, questioning the interplay of fate and choice that had created Two-Face. The old courthouse waited in mourning stillness, golden light streaming through dusty windows onto the worn wood of courtroom 3. Bruce entered quietly, dressed in a simple suit rather than the Batsuit. This visit required Bruce Wayne's perspective, not Batman's. The room remained much as it had been 10 years ago, though now used for storage rather than trials. Boxes of documents lined the walls and plastic sheeting covered the jury box. Bruce walked slowly to the prosecution's table, where Harvey had stood that day, presenting the case that would ultimately cost him everything. "I thought you might come as yourself rather than your alter ego," a voice observed from the gallery. Bruce turned to find a slender woman in her 60s watching him thoughtfully. "Though I suppose we all wear different faces depending on the circumstance." "Dr. Cooper," Bruce acknowledged, recognizing her from Gordon's description. "Jim Gordon suggested you might have insights into Harvey's thinking." She moved forward, her steps measured and deliberate. "I've been expecting someone to contact me today. The anniversary makes it almost inevitable." She joined Bruce at the prosecution table, running her hand lightly over its scarred surface. "Harvey loved this room. Said he could feel the weight of every verdict ever rendered here." "You knew him well," Bruce observed. "As well as anyone could," she confirmed with a sad smile. "Which is to say, not completely. Harvey always kept part of himself in reserve even before the attack. A self-protective instinct masked by charm and confidence." Bruce gestured to the courtroom around them. "He's left a trail of breadcrumbs leading here, letters, memories. This appointment book," he showed her the leather volume. "It suggests he's re-examining the choices that led to his transformation." Dr. Cooper accepted the book, paging through it with professional interest. "Fascinating. This pattern of annotation suggests not just retrospection, but active engagement with counterfactuals. He's not simply remembering what happened, he's systematically analyzing what might have happened instead." "Why now?" Bruce asked. "After 10 years of surrendering choice to the coin, why this sudden interest in the road not taken?" She considered the question carefully. Anniversary reactions are common in trauma survivors. Significant dates often trigger reassessment. She returned the appointment book to Bruce. "But there's something else at work here. These annotations are too methodical for a simple emotional response. This is Harvey, the prosecutor, building a case." "Against whom?" Bruce pressed. Himself, Batman, Gotham? Perhaps all three, she suggested. Have you considered that Harvey's bifurcation might be evolving? Psychological states rarely remain static, even in cases as extreme as his. She moved toward the spot where Harvey had been standing when the acid struck, her gaze contemplative. The division between Harvey Dent and Two-Face has always been presented as absolute, good versus evil, order versus chaos, but human psychology defies such neat categorization. Bruce followed her gaze, remembering the chaotic moments after the attack. Harvey's screams, the panic in the courtroom, the smell of burning flesh. You think the boundaries between his personalities are breaking down, or perhaps becoming more permeable, she clarified. Integration rather than dissolution. These letters you describe, the symbolic returns to significant locations. They suggest someone attempting to construct a coherent narrative from fragmented experiences. A subtle vibration from Bruce's pocket interrupted the conversation. A text from Alfred. News reports of unusual activity at Gotham City College. Two-Face sighted in law building. Bruce pocketed his phone, nodding to Dr. Cooper. Thank you for your insights. I need to go. Mr. Wayne, she called as he reached the courtroom doors. If you or your friend do encounter Harvey today, remember that beneath the theatrical extremes of Two-Face lies a man deeply committed to justice. Distorted and traumatized, yes, but that core principle remains. It may offer a point of connection. Bruce acknowledged her words with a nod before departing. Minutes later, Batman was moving across Gotham's rooftops toward the university campus, the appointment book secure in his utility belt. Each piece of Harvey's puzzle seemed to be leading towards some culminating event, and the location suggested a return to his past role as educator, the Sunday law classes Gordon had mentioned. Gotham City College sprawled across manicured grounds, its Gothic architecture reminiscent of older, more dignified academic traditions. The law building stood at the campus center, its columned facade designed to evoke the Supreme Court. Batman entered through a service entrance, making his way toward the main lecture hall, where campus security reported the disturbance. Inside, he found a scene both bizarre and strangely poignant. Two-Face stood at the lecturer's podium of a semicircular auditorium, addressing an audience consisting solely of photographs, hundreds of them, each placed carefully on a seat. Moving closer, Batman recognized the images. Gotham citizens from all walks of life, criminals and law enforcement, judges and jurors, victims and perpetrators. Harvey looked up as Batman entered, seeming unsurprised by his arrival. Right on schedule, he observed. Did you bring the appointment book? Batman approached slowly, noting that Harvey's trademark coin was nowhere in evidence. Instead, the former district attorney's hands rested flat against the podium, in a posture reminiscent of his courtroom stance. I have it, Batman confirmed. What is all this, Harvey? Two-Face gestured to the photo-filled auditorium. My final class, a decade of legal education distilled to a single principle. His scarred mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. I always was an effective teacher. And the subject today? Batman asked, continuing his slow approach. Choice and chance, Harvey replied. The twin forces that shape every life. He tapped the podium, where Batman now noticed a series of photographs laid out in sequence. Harvey before the attack, the moment of the acid strike captured by a courtroom artist, and progressive images showing his physical and psychological transformation. For 10 years, Harvey continued, I've allowed the coin to make my choices. Abdicating moral agency to the flip of chance. He touched his scarred cheek in an unconscious gesture. a convenient delusion. Batman stopped at the front row, studying Harvey's demeanor closely. The letters, the clues, they suggest you've been questioning that arrangement. Questioning, Harvey repeated thoughtfully. Yes, that's the prosecutor's gift, isn't it? Asking the right questions. He turned toward the largest photograph, an image of himself being sworn in as district attorney, hand raised in solemn oath. I've been interrogating myself, Batman. Both selves. The answers have been illuminating. What did you discover? Batman asked, responding to the unexpected lucidity in Harvey's manner. Two-Face laughed, the sound echoing hollowly in the lecture hall. That the coin was never fair to begin with. Every flip loaded with my own subconscious desires. He reached into his pocket, withdrawing not his silver dollar, but a folded piece of paper. I found this in the appointment book before I left it for you. A note I wrote to myself the night before the Maroney trial. He unfolded the paper carefully, reading aloud. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember why we do this. Not for accolades or power, but because Gotham deserves a justice system that works for everyone. Sometimes that means making hard choices, taking risks. If those risks have consequences, accept them with the same conviction that led you to take them in the first place. Harvey refolded the note with methodical precision. Harvey Dent knew he was taking a risk prosecuting Maroney personally. He chose that risk willingly, eyes open. His voice hardened slightly. What he didn't choose was what came after, allowing that single moment to define and divide him forever. Batman moved closer, sensing the critical juncture they were approaching. What happens now, Harvey? Now? Two-Face echoed, his tone suddenly lighter. Now I teach my final lesson. He reached beneath the podium and withdrew a detonator, its red button gleaming ominously in the lecture hall's subdued lighting. Don't worry, Dark Knight. The only thing rigged to explode is this building. Empty save for you and me and these paper witnesses. Batman's posture tensed. You don't want to do this, Harvey. Don't I? Two-Face challenged, his scarred features twisted in sudden anger. For 10 years I've let the coin decide because choice itself became unbearable. Do you know why? He gestured sharply at the sea of photographs. Because every choice carries consequences we can never fully predict or control. Every decision ripples outward, affecting lives we never intended to touch. He held up the detonator. This choice is simple. Flip the coin. Stands or falls. Let chance decide, as it has for a decade. Or, Batman prompted, intuiting there was more. Harvey's expression shifted, softening slightly. Or make the choice deliberately. Own the consequences either way. He placed the detonator on the podium beside his old silver dollar. That's what these breadcrumbs have been leading to, Batman. Not some elaborate scheme or criminal master plan. Just a man trying to remember how to make a choice without hiding behind chance. Batman studied Harvey intently, recognizing the profound struggle playing out before him. The letters, revisiting significant places, examining your past decisions. You've been building toward this moment of choice. Yes, Harvey acknowledged. One conscious decision to mark the anniversary. To choose rather than flip. He pushed both coin and detonator toward Batman. But I find I'm not ready to make that choice alone. So, I'm giving it to you. Batman remained still, understanding the immense psychological significance of Harvey's gesture. You're surrendering your agency to me instead of the coin. No, Harvey corrected. "I'm asking you to witness my choice, to hold me accountable for it." He straightened to his full height, and for a moment Batman could see the shadow of the district attorney he had once been, principled, determined, unafraid of difficult decisions. "I choose not to destroy this building, not because chance dictates it, but because destruction solves nothing, because Harvey Dent believed in building things, not tearing them down." With deliberate movements, Harvey picked up the detonator and disabled it, removing its power source and placing the components separately on the podium. Then, with equal deliberation, he took his silver dollar and placed it in Batman's gloved hand. "Keep it," he said quietly, a reminder that even the most evenly weighted coin can be influenced by the hand that flips it. Batman closed his fingers around the coin, feeling its familiar weight, the tangible symbol of Harvey's fractured psyche. "What happens now, Harvey?" Two-Face, or perhaps in this moment something closer to Harvey Dent, gazed out at the photographs filling the lecture hall. "Now, I turn myself in, serve my sentence at Arkham, continue the work of integration I've begun." He smiled faintly. "The breadcrumbs weren't just for you, Batman. They were for me, marking a path back towards something resembling wholeness." As the morning light strengthened through the lecture hall windows, Batman watched Harvey gather the photographs from the front row. Images of his parents, Grace Lamont, colleagues from his DA days, personal rather than symbolic. Memories rather than evidence. "I'll leave the rest for the GCPD to collect," Harvey said, straightening his suit jacket with a dignity that transcended his scarred appearance. "Consider it my final contribution to the judicial process, a case study in rehabilitation." Batman activated his communicator. "Gordon, it's over. Law building at Gotham City College. Dent is surrendering voluntarily." When the commissioner arrived minutes later, he found Harvey Dent seated calmly in the front row of the lecture hall, the photographs of his former life arranged neatly beside him. Batman watched from the shadows as Gordon approached his former colleague with a mixture of caution and compassion. "Hello, Jim," Harvey greeted him, his voice steady. "Just like old times, except for the handcuffs." Gordon signaled his officers to wait, taking the seat beside Harvey. "What happened here, Harvey?" "A lecture on jurisprudence," Harvey replied with a hint of his old wry humor. "Topic: the intersection of chance and choice in human affairs." He held out his wrists for the handcuffs. "I've made my choice. I'm ready to face the consequences." As Gordon led Harvey away, the former district attorney paused at the lecture hall doors, looking back to where Batman remained in the shadows. No words passed between them, but something did. An acknowledgement of the small victory achieved this day. Not a criminal apprehended or a plot foiled, but something rarer and more precious. A moment of clarity in which a fractured soul had taken one step toward becoming whole again. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of the Batcave, Bruce placed Harvey's silver dollar in a small display case, not among the trophies of defeated villains, but on his personal workstation, where he would see it daily. Alfred observed the gesture with quiet approval. "A reminder, sir?" he inquired gently. Bruce nodded, his fingers lingering briefly on the case. "Of how thin the line can be between justice and obsession, between purpose and destruction." He turned to where Harvey's letters were carefully preserved, their insights into a divided mind both warning and promise. "And that redemption begins with a single choice, consciously made." Alfred placed a hand briefly on Bruce's shoulder, a rare physical gesture from the reserved Englishman. "Then perhaps Mr. Dent's anniversary has given Gotham a gift after all, a moment of reflection rather than destruction." Yes, Bruce agreed, the weight of his own choices, past and future, settling into perspective. Sometimes the most important battles are the quiet ones, fought in whispers rather than shouts. Outside, Gotham continued its eternal cycle of light and shadow, order and chaos. But for tonight at least, the balance had shifted slightly toward hope. Not through chance or fate, but through the conscious choice of a man remembering who he once had been. In that remembering lay the seeds of who he might yet become. In the halls of Arkham Asylum, Harvey Dent sat in his cell, writing by the light of a small brass lamp that Dr. Cooper had persuaded the administrators to allow him. His newest letter began not with "Dear Harvey," but simply "Today," one word that acknowledged past, present, and future, all existing together in the eternal now of conscious choice. And in the flame's steady glow, both sides of his face, the scarred and the unblemished, were equally illuminated, neither hidden in shadow nor elevated in light. Just a man writing his story, one choice at a time. The weeks that followed brought subtle changes to Arkham Asylum's most notorious patient. Dr. Cooper, now consulting directly on Harvey's case, reported a remarkable consistency in his sessions. No dramatic shifts between personalities, no reliance on the coin to determine his responses. The duality remained, but the boundaries had indeed become more permeable, allowing for moments of integration that would have seemed impossible before. Bruce found himself returning regularly to the preserved letters, reading them in Alfred's measured voice from memory, finding new layers of meaning in Harvey's internal dialogue. There was something uniquely compelling about witnessing a mind in conversation with itself, striving toward wholeness even as it acknowledged its fundamental division. "Alfred," Bruce asked one evening as they sat in the study, rain pattering gently against the manor's windows, "do you think he's truly changing, or is this just another elaborate performance?" Alfred considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I believe Mr. Dent is experiencing what psychiatrists might call a moment of clarity, a window of self-awareness that creates opportunity for genuine change." He paused, selecting his words carefully. "Whether that window remains open long enough for lasting transformation, only time will tell." Bruce nodded, understanding the caution in Alfred's assessment. "Dr. Cooper mentioned something similar. She said integration doesn't mean Harvey will ever be fully well in the conventional sense. The trauma was too profound, the psychological adaptation too complete." "Indeed," Alfred agreed. "But perhaps wholeness need not require the absence of scars. Perhaps it simply means acknowledging them as part of one's complete self, rather than evidence of division." The philosophical observation hung in the air between them, resonating with Bruce's own complex relationship with his dual identities. He had never suffered the dramatic split that Harvey endured, but the distinction between Bruce Wayne and Batman sometimes felt nearly as profound, a division of self maintained through discipline rather than trauma. "I visited him yesterday," Bruce said after a comfortable silence. "As Bruce Wayne, officially as a representative of the Wayne Foundation's rehabilitation program. He recognized me immediately, of course." "And how did you find him?" Alfred inquired. "Different. Steady. He's started teaching law classes for other inmates, those deemed stable enough to participate. The administration had concerns initially, but apparently the program has been remarkably successful." Alfred smiled faintly, the teacher returning to his vocation, most encouraging. "Yes," Bruce agreed. "And he asked about Grace, wanted to know if I could discreetly check on her welfare, not contact her, he was explicit about that, just confirm that she's well." A a consideration that Two-Face would never have shown, Alfred observed. Exactly. Bruce stared into the dancing flames of the study's fireplace, remembering the similar flame that had illuminated Harvey's letters. There was something else, too. He's keeping a journal now, not letters, writing to himself in the present tense as a single entity. Dr. Cooper considers it significant progress. Outside, the rain intensified, wrapping Wayne Manor in a cocoon of gentle sound. These quiet evenings had become more frequent lately, as if Gotham itself were experiencing a period of unusual calm. The major criminal elements seemed subdued, the streets more peaceful than Bruce could remember them being in years. Perhaps, Alfred ventured, Mr. Dent's journey toward integration carries symbolic weight for the city itself. Gotham, too, has always lived with duality. Extraordinary wealth alongside desperate poverty, corruption alongside heroism, darkness perpetually wrestling with light. Bruce considered the observation. You think Harvey's condition reflects Gotham's larger struggles? I believe, Alfred replied carefully, that cities, like people, can experience moments of clarity, opportunities to recognize their divided nature and work toward a more integrated future. He smiled gently at Bruce. And I believe such moments are often catalyzed by individuals who demonstrate that change, however difficult, remains possible. The conversation drifted to other matters: foundation business, manor maintenance, global developments requiring monitoring. But Bruce found his thoughts returning to Harvey throughout the evening, to the image of him writing in his cell, illuminated by that small brass lamp, both sides of his face equally visible in its warm glow. Later, as Bruce prepared for his nightly patrol, he paused before the display case containing Harvey's silver dollar. The coin caught the light, its scarred side no longer a binary opposite to its unblemished face, but simply another aspect of the same whole. Perhaps there was wisdom in that perspective, not just for Harvey, but for Gotham, for Batman, for the eternal struggle between the divisions that defined them all. Batman moved through Gotham that night with particular attentiveness, noting the subtle interplay of light and shadow, order and chaos, choice and chance that shaped the city's nocturnal landscape. And somewhere in Arkham, Harvey Dent continued writing his new story, one conscious choice at a time, finding his way back to wholeness through whispers in the flame. The coin no longer decided his fate. The flame simply illuminated the path he had chosen for himself, a path neither fully in light nor shadow, but somewhere in the complex, human territory between. As the final words of Harvey Dent's story fade into the quiet darkness, we leave behind the contemplative halls of Arkham and the philosophical questions of duality that defined Whispers in the Flame. The brass lamp that illuminated Harvey's journey toward integration now dims, its gentle glow receding as we turn our attention to another corner of Gotham's endless night. The path between stories is like the space between heartbeats, a moment of transition where one tale settles into memory while another prepares to unfold. In this peaceful interlude, we invite you to take a deep breath, letting the themes of choice and chance, redemption and reflection gently recede as new shadows form on the horizon. Now, as Gotham's eternal moonlight shifts to illuminate different streets and different struggles, we prepare to enter the Night of Silent Tears, another journey through Batman's world where whispered confessions give way to unspoken sorrows, where silence itself becomes a language understood by those who listen with their hearts as well as their ears. Let your mind drift easily from one story to the next, carrying forward only the peaceful rhythm of storytelling and the comforting presence of familiar shadows. As one chapter closes, another opens, each connected by the endless night that blankets Gotham and the silent guardian who watches over its dreams. Mist clung to Gotham's skyline, veiling the city in a spectral embrace as Batman stood motionless atop Wayne Tower. The moon hung full and luminous, casting long shadows across the architectural tapestry below. He breathed slowly, allowing his senses to expand beyond the confines of his cowl, feeling the city's pulse beneath his feet. Something had changed in Gotham's rhythm, a subtle disturbance in its chaotic harmony that only he could perceive. The city wasn't just suffering from its usual ailments tonight. It was holding its breath, as if aware of an ancient presence that had returned to its streets. "Master Bruce?" Alfred's voice came softly through his cowl. "I've been monitoring the pattern you identified. 3 more water treatment facilities have reported microscopic anomalies in their filtration systems." Batman's eyes narrowed as he watched vapor rise from a distant factory chimney, dissipating into the night air like whispered secrets. "It's not random, Alfred. The pattern forms a perfect geometric sequence across Gotham's infrastructure." "Indeed," the butler replied, his voice carrying the weight of concern that came from decades of watching his charge face the darkness. "And the mineral traces in the water samples are rather distinctive, compounds I haven't seen since Ra's al Ghul's last visit to Gotham," Batman finished, his voice dropping to a contemplative whisper. The name itself seemed to make the night air colder around him. Ra's al Ghul, the demon's head, a man who had lived centuries, who had seen empires rise and fall, who believed that destruction was merely the prelude to rebirth. The cowl's enhanced vision captured a flicker of movement on a distant rooftop, too deliberate to be casual, too graceful to be common. Batman's muscles tensed imperceptibly beneath his armor. "I'm not alone, Alfred." "Do be careful, sir," came the measured response. "If it is indeed Ra's al Ghul's people observing you, remember that subtlety has never been their opening gambit." With practiced precision, Batman launched himself from the ledge, allowing his cape to catch the night air and carry him in a silent glide across Gotham's canyons of steel and glass. The figure on the distant rooftop didn't flee, which told him everything he needed to know about their intentions. This wasn't surveillance. It was an invitation. He landed without sound on the weathered stone of Gotham Cathedral's western spire, where the gargoyles had watched over the city for more than a century. The figure stood with their back to him, silhouetted against the moon, feminine, poised, dangerous. "You're losing your touch, Talia," Batman said quietly. "There was a time when you wouldn't have allowed me to detect your presence so easily." Talia al Ghul turned, and even in the moonlight, Batman could see the complexity of emotions that crossed her face. Pride, sadness, determination, and something deeper that had always existed between them, regardless of which sides they found themselves on. "Perhaps I wanted to be found, beloved," she replied, her voice carrying both warmth and warning. "Not all observations are meant to remain secret." Batman remained still, reading her posture, the subtle tensions in her shoulders, the careful distance she maintained. "Your father has returned to Gotham." It wasn't a question, but Talia nodded regardless. "He believes the time has come for this city's rebirth." "Through destruction," Batman replied, his voice revealing none of the concern that tightened his chest. Ra's al Ghul's vision of rebirth had always been preceded by calamity. Forests growing from the ashes of civilization, new orders rising from the ruins of the old. Talia stepped closer, her movement fluid as water in moonlight. "He wishes to speak with you, Bruce." not as adversaries, but as two men who have witnessed the depths of humanity's failures and the heights of its potential. The mineral compounds in Gotham's water suggest he's doing more than planning a conversation. A sad smile touched Talia's lips. My father has lived too long to believe that words alone can change the course of history, but he respects you enough to offer dialogue before demonstration. She extended her hand, offering a small, intricately carved jade token. Come to the place where water and stone have spoken to each other for centuries. Come alone. Not as Batman, the guardian of Gotham's present, but as Bruce Wayne, a man who might contemplate its future. Batman accepted the token without touching her fingers, though the space between them seemed charged with unspoken history. And if I decide against this meeting, then you will fight the inevitable with your usual determination, Talia replied, stepping back toward the roof's edge. And my father will proceed with what he believes must be done for the greater harmony of this world. Her expression softened momentarily. He has always seen in you the son he wished for, Bruce, the worthy heir to his vision. Remember that when you face him. Before he could respond, she stepped backwards off the cathedral roof, disappearing into the mist that had begun rolling in from Gotham Harbor. Batman moved to the edge, but knew he would find no trace of her passage. The League of Shadows left footprints only when they wished to be followed. The jade token felt cool against his palm, its surface carved with ancient symbols that spoke of balance, renewal, and the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. He knew the place it indicated, the forgotten caverns beneath Gotham's oldest district, where underground rivers had carved cathedral-like spaces from living rock long before humans had built their first structures above. Alfred, he sub-vocalized, knowing the cowl's systems would carry his whisper. Run a comprehensive analysis on all water treatment facilities. Look for any compounds that might interact with the mineral traces we've already detected. Already underway, sir, came the prompt reply. And might I suggest contacting Master Fox regarding the specialized filtration system he developed after Ra's al Ghul's last attempt to introduce compounds into Gotham's water supply? Do it, Batman confirmed, already launching himself back into the night. And, Alfred, prepare the cave. I need to review everything we have on the chemical composition of the Lazarus Pit. The mention of the mystical waters that had sustained Ra's al Ghul's unnaturally long life seemed to hang in the night air as Batman glided between Gotham's towers. The Lazarus Pit, source of life and madness, the miraculous pool that could heal any wound, cure any disease, even reverse death itself, but at the cost of temporary insanity and, with repeated use, a slow erosion of the user's humanity. As he moved through the night, Batman's thoughts turned inward, to the philosophical questions that had always defined his complex relationship with Ra's al Ghul. They shared a diagnosis of society's ills, but differed fundamentally on the prescription. Where Batman sought to protect and reform, Ra's believed in the purifying power of collapse and rebirth. In his centuries of life, he had seen civilizations crumble and new ones emerge from their ruins, and this perspective made his arguments difficult to dismiss entirely. There was a certain terrible logic to his vision of cyclical renewal. Batman's return to the Batcave was met with the familiar, comforting sounds of home, the distant drip of water on stone, the soft flutter of bats in the upper caverns, and the precise movements of Alfred preparing tea at the main computer console. I took the liberty of laying out suitable attire for a man contemplating both a social call and potential combat, Alfred remarked dryly, gesturing to where a carefully selected set of clothes waited, functional yet befitting Bruce Wayne's station, with subtle armor integrated into their design. Bruce removed his cowl, feeling the cool air of the cave against his face as he accepted the tea Alfred offered. He's planning something comprehensive, Alfred. The water supply is just the beginning. Indeed, sir. Mr. Fox has already identified 3 separate compounds in the samples, each harmless individually, but potentially quite transformative when combined. Alfred's expression remained composed, but Bruce could read the concern in the slight tightening around his eyes. He believes they may be components of a synthetic variant of the Lazarus Pit formula. Bruce set down his tea, his mind racing through implications. Not to restore life, but to accelerate change. Cellular metamorphosis on a city-wide scale. Precisely, Alfred confirmed, though to what end we can only speculate. Moving to the computer, Bruce began reviewing the analysis, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he correlated the findings with historical data from previous encounters with Ra's al Ghul. He's always believed that Gotham represents the worst excesses of modern civilization: corruption, inequality, environmental degradation. In his mind, it's a city that needs to be cleansed before it can be reborn. And yet, Alfred observed quietly, he continues to see you as worthy of joining his crusade. One might wonder why the protector of a city he despises earns such respect. Bruce paused, his eyes fixed on the screen but his thoughts elsewhere, because he recognizes the same diagnosis, even if he rejects my treatment plan. He turned to face his oldest friend. Rez believes I lack the courage to take my understanding of Gotham's corruption to its logical conclusion, that the patient is terminal and requires release rather than resuscitation. Alfred set down the tea tray with deliberate care. And what do you believe, Master Bruce? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with all the years Bruce had spent fighting to save a city that sometimes seemed determined to destroy itself. I believe, he finally said, that while race sees cities as organisms that follow natural cycles of birth, decay, and death, I see them as something more complex, as ongoing conversations between people and place, always capable of finding new expressions if given the chance. A small smile touched Alfred's lips. Well articulated, sir, though I suspect your dialogue with Ra's al Ghul will require both philosophy and preparation for less civilized forms of debate. Bruce nodded, returning his attention to the computer. Contact Lucius. Have him prepare countermeasures for all possible combinations of the compounds we've detected. And Alfred, if this goes wrong... It won't, sir, Alfred interrupted with quiet certainty. Because unlike Ra's al Ghul, you understand that Gotham's strength lies not in its architecture or infrastructure, but in its people, in their stubborn refusal to surrender to despair despite ample provocation. His voice softened. It's a quality you share with them, though you might not always recognize it. As Bruce prepared to meet Ra's al Ghul, donning the specially prepared attire, he considered Alfred's words. Perhaps that was the fundamental difference between his vision and that of the demon's head. Not just methods or morality, but a basic understanding of what constituted a city's soul. To Ra's, corrupted systems required purification through destruction. To Bruce, those very systems, for all their flaws, represented countless individual hopes, dreams, and possibilities that deserved protection. The journey to the underground caverns took Bruce through forgotten parts of Gotham, ancient tunnels dating back to the city's founding, passages that had once connected speakeasies during Prohibition, and finally the natural cave systems that predated human settlement entirely. Here, far below the city's foundations, the sound of flowing water grew from a whisper to a constant presence, a liquid symphony that had shaped stone over countless millennia. The jade token grew warmer in his hand as he approached his destination, responding to some property in the surrounding rock. The cavern opened before him, its ceiling lost in darkness despite the soft illumination that seemed to emanate from the pool at its center. A pool whose waters glowed with an unnatural emerald radiance that pulsed like a heartbeat. Standing at the pool's edge, his back to Bruce, was a figure in robes of deep green and gold, tall, straight-backed, emanating an authority that came not from physical prowess, but from the weight of centuries. "Detective," Ra's al Ghul said without turning, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Your punctuality has always been one of your more admirable traits." Bruce stopped at a careful distance, noting the absence of guards or assassins. This was indeed intended as a private conversation, though he harbored no illusions about their isolation. The League of Shadows would be positioned throughout the tunnel system, ready to intervene if their master required it. "You've been busy since your return to Gotham," Bruce replied, studying the glowing pool. It wasn't a true Lazarus pit. Those were exceedingly rare natural phenomena, but rather an artificial recreation, lacking the full power of the original but potentially useful for Raz's purposes. "Your chemicals in the water supply suggest preparations for a city-wide transformation." Raz finally turned, and Bruce was struck as always by the man's presence. Despite his centuries of life, Raz appeared as a man in his prime, distinguished, remarkably handsome, with penetrating eyes that held wisdom and madness in equal measure. Only someone who knew what to look for would notice the subtle signs of recent Lazarus pit immersion, a too-perfect quality to his skin, a slight overbright clarity to his gaze. "Transformation," Raz repeated, as if savoring the word. "An elegant description, detective. Not destruction, as some might characterize my work, but transformation. The acceleration of a natural process that would otherwise take decades of decay." He gestured to the artificial pit between them. "You've studied my methods long enough to understand the principles. The Lazarus pit doesn't simply restore, it purifies, removes weakness, enhances strength. What I offer Gotham is similar, a cleansing fire from which a worthy city might emerge." Bruce maintained a neutral expression, though his mind was working through the chemical compounds, their potential interactions, the time frame in which Ra's plan might unfold. "And the cost? The Lazarus pit extracts a price from those it restores. What price would Gotham pay for this transformation?" A smile touched Ray's lips, appreciative of Bruce's insight. "The weak would not survive. Those corrupted beyond redemption would be burned away. But is that not the pattern of all natural selection? All meaningful evolution?" He stepped closer, his movement fluid despite his apparent age. "You've spent years applying tourniquets to Gotham's wounds, detective. Yet the infection spreads, the corruption deepens. At what point does the physician acknowledge that amputation offers the only hope for the patient's survival?" "I'm not Gotham's physician," Bruce replied evenly. "I'm its guardian." "A distinction without difference," Raz countered. "Both require diagnosis, intervention, a commitment to healing. But a guardian who refuses to make difficult choices becomes merely a witness to decline." His expression softened slightly, almost paternal. "I have always seen in you the potential to understand the longer view, Bruce. To recognize that compassion sometimes requires terrible choices for the greater good." Bruce studied the man before him, this immortal who had watched civilizations rise and fall, who had guided and destroyed according to his own vision of balance. "And who determines the greater good, Raz? Who decides which parts of Gotham are corrupted beyond redemption? You, from the perspective of centuries, or the people who live each day in its streets? who build lives and communities despite the challenges. Reyes gestured expansively, encompassing the cavern and, by extension, the city above them. Look around you, detective. These caverns were carved by water over millennia. Patient, persistent, unhurried. Nature does not rush its greatest works. My perspective is similarly shaped by time and observation. I have seen what you cannot, the inevitable patterns of civilization's decline, the necessity of periodic renewal. His eyes met Bruce's directly. Your attachment to individual trees blinds you to the health of the forest. Perhaps, Bruce acknowledged, moving slowly around the edge of the artificial pit, watching how its waters responded to his proximity with subtle wavelets of luminescence. Or perhaps your detachment from individual lives makes it easier to rationalize their sacrifice. A flash of something, irritation perhaps, or disappointment, crossed Ra's face before his composure returned. You misunderstand me, as always. I do not dismiss individual lives as insignificant, quite the opposite. I believe humanity's potential is sacred enough to require occasional harsh pruning to flourish. He followed Bruce's movement with his eyes, but didn't change position. The compounds I've introduced to Gotham's water are merely catalysts, detective. They will accelerate the city's inherent tendencies, both virtuous and corrupt. Those with strength, moral fiber, and clarity of purpose will find themselves enhanced. Those whose souls are already lost to greed, cruelty, and selfishness will be consumed by their own worst natures. Creating chaos you can shape to your vision, Bruce concluded. A manufactured apocalypse that allows you to rebuild in your image. Raz smiled, genuinely pleased by Bruce's understanding. Not chaos, detective. Revelation. The true nature of each soul made manifest. He gestured to the artificial pit. This is merely a demonstration model. The formula I've developed for Gotham is more subtle, designed not to restore youth or heal wounds, but to strip away pretense and amplify essence. The corrupt politician will find his greed consuming him from within. The abuser will experience his own cruelty turned inward, while those with noble hearts will discover reserves of strength and clarity they never imagined. The implications sent a chill through Bruce that had nothing to do with the cavern's cool air. Raz wasn't planning simple destruction. He was proposing a kind of mystical judgment, a separation of wheat from chaff according to his ancient standards. More disturbing still was the underlying logic of the plan, which contained enough truth to make it dangerously seductive. And you appoint yourself Gotham's judge, Bruce said quietly, based on criteria from civilizations long turned to dust. Not judge, Ras corrected, merely catalyst. Each soul will judge itself through its response to the formula. He stepped closer to the artificial pit, allowing its glow to illuminate his features from below. Consider what you might become, Bruce, if your essence were amplified. Your determination, your courage, your unwavering commitment to justice, all enhanced beyond their current limitations. You could become the force for change you've always aspired to be. Bruce recognized the offer beneath the words, not just survival for himself, but elevation, transformation into something beyond his current capabilities. It was a temptation tailored specifically to him, crafted by someone who understood his deepest motivations and frustrations. At the cost of watching Gotham tear itself apart, he replied. Witnessing suffering you've triggered in the name of eventual renewal. Ras sighed, genuine regret in his expression. You still think too small, detective. Too focused on immediate outcomes rather than ultimate harmony. He moved away from the pit, circling toward a stone altar where various implements, were arranged with meticulous precision. I had hoped you might at least understand, even if you could not bring yourself to join me. Kalia believed you capable of seeing the necessity of my work, if not embracing its methods. Kalia, Bruce repeated softly. Where does she stand in all this? Another faithful executor of your vision? Something complex crossed Raz's face. Pride, sorrow, uncertainty. My daughter walks her own path, as she always has. She understands the necessity of renewal but questions my methods. In that perhaps she is more your student than mine. He selected a vial from the altar, holding it up to the pit's glow. Inside, a liquid shifted with hypnotic patterns, neither quite solid nor fully liquid. She helped perfect this formula, though I believe she harbors hopes you might persuade me toward a less comprehensive application. Bruce watched the vial carefully, calculating distances, angles, possibilities. And is that possibility real, Raz, or merely a daughter's wishful thinking? Raz considered the question with apparent sincerity. I have lived too long and seen too much to believe in half measures, detective. Cultures, like individuals, eventually reach a point where rehabilitation becomes impossible, where the kindest act is to ease their passage and nurture what comes after. He returned the vial to its place on the altar, but I respect you enough to offer a compromise. Work with me to identify those parts of Gotham truly worth preserving. Help me target the formula more precisely, sparing what you believe can be redeemed. It was a masterful move, acknowledging Bruce's concerns while maintaining the fundamental premise that Gotham required purification. The offer of collaboration was designed to blur the line between resistance and complicity, to draw Bruce into Raz's worldview through incremental acceptance. I've spent my life trying to save Gotham, Bruce said quietly, not by deciding who deserves salvation, but by creating conditions where redemption remains possible for everyone. Your compromise still requires me to abandon that principle. Raz studied him with an expression approaching genuine sadness. Then we remain at our eternal impasse, you and I. Two men who diagnose the same disease but cannot agree on treatment. He returned to the edge of the artificial pit, its glow casting his face in sharp contrasts of light and shadow. The components are already in place, detective. By dawn, they will have reached saturation levels in Gotham's water supply. The final catalyst need only be introduced and the transformation will begin. Bruce tensed imperceptibly, reading the shift in Ra's posture, the subtle change in the atmosphere between them. The philosophical discussion was concluding. Action would follow. And if I prevent that introduction? You may delay it, Raz acknowledged with a slight incline of his head. Your resources and determination make you a formidable obstacle, but the League of Shadows has patience to match your persistence. What doesn't occur tomorrow will happen the next day, or the next. His eyes met Bruce's with centuries of conviction behind them. The difference between us has always been horizon, detective. You fight for Gotham's tomorrow. I work for humanity's next 1,000 years. The statement hung in the air between them, a fundamental truth that defined their relationship. Bruce found himself unable to entirely dismiss Ra's perspective. The man's centuries of observation lent weight to his judgments, however harsh they might seem. There was a terrible clarity to Ra's vision, a willingness to make choices that Bruce had always refused. Perhaps, Bruce finally said, your centuries have taught you too much about humanity's patterns, and too little about its possibilities. He straightened, decision made. I won't let you sacrifice Gotham on the altar of your grand design, Ras. Not tomorrow, not the next day, not ever. A sad smile touched Ray's lips. I expected nothing less, Detective. It is, after all, why I have always respected you, even as an adversary." He made a subtle gesture with one hand, and from the shadows of the cavern, League assassins emerged, silent, disciplined, deadly. Our conversations always end this way, with philosophy giving way to more direct forms of persuasion. Bruce assessed the situation with practiced efficiency. 12 assassins positioned strategically around the cavern, all armed with traditional League weapons. No firearms, as Raz considered them inelegant, but each opponent highly trained in multiple martial disciplines. The artificial pit limited movement in the center of the cavern, creating choke points that could work either for or against him. "It doesn't have to end in conflict," Bruce offered, more for form than expectation. "Withdraw your operatives from Gotham, find another testing ground for your theories of renewal." Raz actually laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Your optimism remains one of your most charming qualities, Detective. But we both know our paths are set." His expression sobered. "Though I offer you one final courtesy. Surrender now, and you may leave unharmed. I have no desire to destroy what I still hope might one day become an ally." Bruce's response was not in words, but in movement. A precisely aimed batarang that struck the cavern's illumination system, plunging the space into darkness, relieved only by the eerie glow of the artificial pit. In the momentary confusion, he activated the night vision in his specially designed contact lenses, giving him a crucial advantage. The fight was both brutal and beautiful, a deadly ballet performed in the semi-darkness of the ancient cavern. League assassins moved with fluid grace, their attacks coordinated with the precision of long training. But Bruce moved among them like a shadow within shadows, his every strike calculated for maximum efficiency. He was careful to avoid lethal force, even as his opponents showed no such reservation. This, too, defined the philosophical divide between himself and race, the line he refused to cross, the principle that separated guardian from executioner. Throughout the engagement, Raz observed without participating, his expression that of a teacher evaluating a promising student. Only when the last of his assassins had fallen did he step forward, removing his outer robe with deliberate care. "Always impressive, Detective," he commented, assuming a fighting stance that incorporated elements from martial traditions centuries old. "Though your insistence on keeping your opponents alive creates inefficiency." Bruce faced him, his breathing controlled despite the exertion of the previous combat. "Not inefficiency, purpose. The difference between us in its most basic form. Their combat was nothing like the previous skirmish, no flurry of strikes and counters, but rather a measured exchange between masters, each movement containing layers of meaning and technique. Rays fought with the accumulated knowledge of centuries, transitions between styles that had been forgotten by all but the most dedicated historians of martial arts. Bruce countered with innovation, adaptation, and a willingness to incorporate unconventional elements that Ray's traditionalist approach sometimes failed to anticipate. They were evenly matched as they had always been. Ray's with his centuries of experience, Bruce with his unparalleled drive and training. The fight might have continued indefinitely, a physical manifestation of their philosophical standoff, had Bruce not executed a maneuver that allowed him to reach the altar where Ray's had left the vial of catalyst. Seizing the container, Bruce put distance between himself and Russ, holding the vial over the hard stone floor. "It ends here, Russ. Without this, your compounds remain inert in Gotham's water." Ray's straightened, making no move to attack. "Indeed. Though destroying it merely returns us to the stance of patience I described earlier, the formula can be recreated." But not quickly, Bruce countered. And not before we've neutralized the components already in the water supply. He tightened his grip on the vial. Lucius Fox has already developed countermeasures based on the samples we detected. By morning, your work in Gotham will be undone. Something like genuine admiration crossed Ra's face. Always thorough, detective. Always prepared. He made a gesture of concession. This round belongs to you, it seems. Bruce maintained his guard, knowing Ra's al Ghul's reputation for acceptance often preceded his most dangerous counterattacks. Call off your people in Gotham, all of them, or this vial won't be the only thing that breaks. Raz studied him for a long moment, reading the resolve in Bruce's stance, the unspoken threat that extended beyond the immediate situation. Finally, he inclined his head in a gesture of acquiescence. Very well. My operatives will withdraw from Gotham by dawn. You have my word, for whatever value you place upon it. Despite their adversarial relationship, Bruce knew that Ra's al Ghul's word, once genuinely given, was binding, a matter of honor for a man who had lived by his own strict code for centuries. I'll hold you to that, he replied. And Raz, don't return to Gotham. Find another laboratory for your theories of renewal. For now, Raz agreed with a small smile. Though I suspect our paths will cross again, detective, the fundamental disagreement between us remains unresolved. His expression softened slightly. Give my regards to Talia when next you see her. Tell her that even in disappointment, a father can find reason for pride. With that cryptic message, Raz made another gesture, and from hidden recesses in the cavern walls, smoke began to fill the space. Not an attack, but a traditional League of Shadows exit strategy. Bruce knew that by the time it cleared, Raz and any of his assassins still capable of movement would be gone, retreated into the labyrinthine tunnel system beneath Gotham. True to expectation, when the smoke dissipated, Bruce found himself alone in the cavern with only the unconscious forms of those assassins too injured to be evacuated. The artificial pit continued its gentle pulsing, its purpose now abandoned. With careful precision, Bruce secured the vial of catalyst in a specialized containment unit from his belt, designed by Lucius Fox to neutralize even the most volatile compounds. Then he contacted Alfred, his voice echoing slightly in the now empty cavern. It's done, Alfred. Raz has agreed to withdraw from Gotham. Most gratifying news, sir, came the reply, Alfred's voice somehow bringing the comfort of home even to this ancient underground space. Though I presume we shall maintain a certain healthy skepticism regarding his compliance. Already in motion, Bruce confirmed. Alert Fox that we'll need the water supply countermeasures implemented immediately, and have the Bat computer track all known League of Shadows exit routes from Gotham. I want confirmation when they've departed. Very good, sir, and the individuals you've undoubtedly left in various states of unconsciousness. Bruce glanced at the fallen assassins. Anonymous tip to GCPD, standard procedure. He began making his way toward the tunnel that would lead him back to the surface. I'm on my way home, Alfred. There was a pause before Alfred replied, his voice carrying a note of gentle understanding. Might I inquire, sir, whether your conversation with Ra's al Ghul was illuminating? The question carried weight beyond its simple phrasing. Alfred had always understood the complex relationship between Bruce and the immortal known as the Demon's Head, the strange respect that existed between them despite their fundamental opposition. The way each encounter left Bruce questioning his own methods and principles. Still believes Gotham needs to be destroyed to be saved, Bruce replied after a moment's consideration. that its corruption is terminal rather than treatable. A convenient philosophy, Alfred observed, for a man who has lived long enough to witness rebuilding after destruction. The luxury of centuries provides a rather different perspective on collapse than does the experience of those living through it. Bruce made his way through the twisting tunnels, moving steadily upward toward the city above. He offered a compromise, targeted application rather than city-wide effect. Preservation of what I deemed worthy, the temptation of playing God, Alfred replied, his voice carrying centuries of English reserve. Quite seductive, I imagine, especially when offered by someone with Ra's al Ghul's particular charisma. It was never really tempting, Bruce said after a moment's reflection. But his fundamental point that some systems become too corrupt for reform isn't entirely without merit. There are days when I wonder if he's right about Gotham. Alfred's response came with quiet certainty. With respect, Master Bruce, I believe Ra's al Ghul's greatest error lies not in his diagnosis, but in his time frame. He has lived so long that he views civilizations as brief candles, easily extinguished to make way for new light. But those of us with more conventional lifespans must work with the cities we have, however imperfect, because they represent the collected hopes and efforts of countless individuals who will never see the centuries-distant results of Ra's renewal. As Bruce emerged from the tunnels into a quiet Gotham alleyway, the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. He paused, looking up at the city he had sworn to protect, its silhouette a jagged testament to human ambition, corruption, creativity, and resilience. You're saying his immortality has made him impatient, Bruce observed, a small smile touching his lips at the paradox. Precisely, sir, Alfred replied, and Bruce could hear the answering smile in his voice. When one has forever, perhaps immediate results seem more appealing than gradual improvement. Those of us confined to a single lifetime develop a certain appreciation for incremental progress. Bruce began making his way home through the awakening city, his movements a shadow among shadows in the liminal space between night and morning. And you believe incremental progress is still possible for Gotham? Alfred's response came with the quiet conviction that had sustained Bruce through his darkest moments. I believe, Master Bruce, that while Ra's al Ghul sees cities as organisms subject to natural law, you understand them as ongoing conversations between generations. Imperfect, contradictory, sometimes maddening, but always containing the possibility of growth and redemption. A brief pause. Rather like yourself, if I may be so bold. The observation drew a genuine laugh from Bruce, brief but real, a rare sound that echoed softly in the empty pre-dawn streets. Bold indeed, Alfred. Does one's best, sir, came the dignified reply. Now, might I suggest you hurry home? I've prepared that special blend of tea you favor after particularly philosophical encounters, and I believe both the tea and your aging butler would prefer not to wait indefinitely. The following evening found Bruce in the Batcave once more, reviewing data from across Gotham. The night had brought reports from Lucius Fox confirming that the neutralization of Raz's compounds in the water supply was proceeding as planned. Special filtration systems had been activated at strategic points throughout the city's infrastructure, gradually cleansing the subtle chemical traces that would have been the foundation for Raz's transformation. Master Bruce, Alfred said, setting down a fresh cup of tea beside the computer console. I've just received word from our observers at the docks. The last known vessel associated with the League of Shadows has departed Gotham waters. It appears Ra's al Ghul is honoring his word. Bruce nodded, studying the satellite imagery that showed the sleek ship moving steadily out to sea. For now, he'll return eventually. He always does. Indeed, sir. The immortal can afford to be patient. Alfred paused, studying Bruce's expression. something still troubles you about your encounter. It wasn't a question, but Bruce answered it regardless. He offered a choice I couldn't accept, to collaborate in deciding which parts of Gotham deserved salvation and which warranted destruction, as if worthiness could be so easily determined. Ah, Alfred nodded with understanding. The ancient dilemma of the flawed judge presuming to render perfect judgment. A particular irony coming from Ra's al Ghul, whose own lengthy existence has been punctuated by periods of madness induced by the very waters he reveres. Bruce turned from the screen, his eyes finding Alfred's. That's just it, Alfred. Race believes the Lazarus Pit has given him clarity, the ability to see patterns across centuries that others miss, and sometimes I wonder if he's right, if his perspective grants him insights that I'm blind to because I'm too close to the problems. Alfred was quiet for a moment, considering his response with characteristic care. If I may, sir, the value of your closeness to Gotham is precisely what Ra's al Ghul lacks. His centuries of observation have given him patterns without texture, data without intimacy. He sees the city as an experiment spanning generations, while you experience it as a living, breathing entity whose wounds you feel as your own. The butler's voice softened. That empathy, which he would consider a weakness, is actually your greatest strength as Gotham's guardian. Bruce turned back to the computer, bringing up footage from across the city, ordinary people going about their lives, unaware of how close they had come to becoming subjects in Ra's al Ghul's grand experiment in purification. Ra's believes my refusal to accept Gotham's terminal diagnosis is sentimentality, that I lack the courage to administer what he sees as necessary euthanasia, whereas you understand that diagnosis itself is premature, Alfred countered. When one has witnessed hundreds of civilizations rise and fall, perhaps all problems begin to look cyclical, all solutions identical. But Gotham is not Babylon or Rome or Constantinople. Its particular combination of challenges and possibilities has never existed before, in precisely this form. Bruce's fingers moved across the keyboard, cycling through more images of the city he had sworn to protect. He offered transformation, Alfred, a Gotham purified of corruption through a process that would destroy those he deemed irredeemable, while elevating those he considered worthy. And who would determine this worthiness? Alfred asked, though they both knew the answer. Ra's al Ghul's criteria have been shaped by civilizations long turned to dust, his judgment clouded by repeated exposure to waters that grant life at the cost of sanity. Bruce nodded slowly. That's the fundamental flaw in his vision. He believes wisdom accumulates linearly with time, that his centuries of life have given him perfect judgment. But wisdom doesn't work that way. It requires constant recalibration, humility in the face of new evidence, openness to possibility, qualities that repeated immersion in the Lazarus Pit tends to erode, Alfred observed. There is a certain irony in seeking renewal through waters that gradually diminish one's capacity for genuine growth. The observation struck Bruce as profoundly true. Ra's al Ghul, for all his accumulated knowledge and experience, had become fixed in his patterns, seeing in each new civilization the same flaws he had diagnosed in countless others. His immortality, rather than granting perfect wisdom, had fossilized his understanding, rendering him incapable of seeing new possibilities amid familiar pattern. There's something else, Alfred, Bruce said quietly. Something Ra's said about Talia. He mentioned that she questions his methods, that she hoped I might persuade him toward less drastic action. Alfred's eyebrow rose slightly. Indeed, sir, That suggests rather more independence of thought than Ra's al Ghul typically encourages among his followers. It suggests an opportunity, Bruce replied, not just to counter Ra's plans when they surface, but perhaps to influence the future direction of the League of Shadows itself. Through Ms. Al Ghul, Alfred concluded, a prospect not without its complications, given your history. Bruce's expression remained neutral, though Alfred knew him well enough to read the complexity beneath the surface. Talia has always been caught between loyalty to her father and her own moral compass. If she's beginning to question the necessity of Ra's methods, there may be a chance to shift the League toward less destructive approaches to addressing global corruption. A rather optimistic assessment, Alfred noted, though not entirely without merit. The daughter has never fully embraced the father's willingness to sacrifice innocence in service to his grand vision. That distinction could prove significant over time. Bruce turned his attention back to the computer, bringing up a global map marked with known League of Shadows facilities and operations. We'll need to establish discrete channels of communication, ways to exchange information without directly compromising either of our positions. Playing the very long game, then, Alfred observed, a strategy Ra's al Ghul himself might appreciate were he not its target. Not its target, Bruce corrected. Its beneficiary, whether he recognizes it or not. If the League could be redirected toward addressing corruption and environmental destruction without the collateral damage Ra's considers acceptable, he trailed off, considering the possibilities. It could become a force for genuine renewal rather than cyclical destruction. Alfred studied his charge with a mixture of pride and concern. A ambitious vision, Master Bruce, and one that will require patience to match that of the immortal himself. The difference, Bruce replied quietly, is that my patience serves life rather than death, preservation rather than purification. That's a distinction worth the time it will take to realize. As night settled fully over Gotham, Bruce prepared to begin his patrol. The immediate threat from Ra's al Ghul had been neutralized, but the city faced its usual array of challenges: street crime, corruption, the endless dance between predator and prey that defined urban existence. Yet as he donned the cape and cowl, Bruce felt a curious sense of clarity. His encounter with Ra's had forced him to articulate his own vision for Gotham more precisely, not as a patient to be cured or a problem to be solved, but as a conversation to be sustained, protected, and occasionally guided toward its better possibility. "You know, sir," Alfred said as he handed Batman his final pieces of equipment, "there's a certain wisdom in your refusal to play God with Gotham's future. Ra's al Ghul believes his centuries of life grant him the right to determine who deserves salvation. You, despite your considerable resources and influence, recognize that true guardianship lies not in controlling outcomes, but in preserving possibilities." Batman paused at the threshold of the cave, looking back at the man who had been father, friend, and moral compass throughout his journey. "Ra's sees only the patterns of history, Alfred. I try to see the people making those patterns, and their capacity to choose differently given the chance. A perspective that makes you uniquely suited to be Gotham's guardian," Alfred replied, "and perhaps, eventually, the mentor that both Ra's al Ghul and his daughter truly need, though neither would readily admit it." With a slight nod of acknowledgement, Batman stepped into the waiting Batmobile. As the vehicle roared through the hidden exit and into the night, he reflected on the strange symmetry of his relationship with the immortal known as the Demon's Head. Both sought to address corruption and injustice. Both recognized the systemic nature of society's ills. Both were willing to dedicate their lives to creating change. Yet where Ra's al Ghul sought to accelerate destruction in service to some future renaissance he might personally oversee, Batman worked to preserve what was worthy in the present, while creating conditions for organic growth and renewal. It was a difference not merely of methods, but of fundamental perspective, the immortal's detached observation versus the mortal's engaged participation. And perhaps Batman thought, as Gotham's skyline rose before him, that was the most profound insight from their encounter. Razor's immortality, rather than granting him superior wisdom, had removed him from the very humanity he claimed to serve. His extended perspective, spanning centuries, had paradoxically narrowed his vision, reducing complex human societies to predictable patterns of rise and fall, corruption and cleansing. In contrast, Batman's acceptance of his own mortality, his recognition that he would not live to see all of Gotham's evolution, that his work would always remain incomplete, kept him connected to the lived experience of those he protected. It was precisely this limitation that granted him the empathy Raz had sacrificed in his pursuit of perfect judgment. As he merged with the shadows of the city he had sworn to protect, Batman felt a rare moment of certainty. Ra's al Ghul, for all his centuries of experience, had forgotten something essential about human societies, that their true value lay not in their perfection but in their potential, not in their purity but in their messy, contradictory capacity for both terrible cruelty and unexpected grace. And in that understanding lay Batman's answer to the Demon's Head's vision of purification through destruction. Gotham would never be perfect, would never be free from corruption or pain or injustice, but as long as it remained alive, as long as its citizens had the freedom to strive and fail and strive again, it contained within itself the seeds of countless possible futures, each one a testament to humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender hope in the face of darkness. That was a truth worth protecting night after night against all those who would sacrifice the complex present on the altar of some imagined perfect future. And as Batman disappeared into the shadows of the city he loved, despite all its flaws, he carried that certainty with him like a talisman against the seductive simplicity of Ra's al Ghul's ancient wisdom. In the end, perhaps that was the night's most valuable insight, that true guardianship required not the detachment of centuries, but the fully engaged compassion of someone who recognized both the frailty and the potential of the human condition. Not a god passing judgment from Olympian heights, but a man moving through the shadows of his city, feeling its pain and protecting its possibilities, one vigilant night at a time. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.